put this right here. Hopefully it doesn't cause any issues. How are we doing? Good, good. So for those, I haven't been up here for a while, so for those of you who may not know who I am, I'm Megan. I usually help lead the worship band when I'm not preaching, but today, you're stuck with me. Before we start, there are a few people that I know are watching us on the live stream. So hello to the Palmers that are at their house, and my parents who are on the beach. Such a rough way to watch church, huh? Or participate with church. So good morning to them, and good morning to you who are here. I am honored, as always, to be in front of you, giving you some good stuff, hopefully, this morning. So we are on the last week of our core values series. And the past few weeks, we've been walking through these core values and the mission of our church because we never want you to forget it. We never want you to lose sight of why we do this and how we do it. And so before we get to the last core value, I want to recap our mission and then the previous 4 core values that Aaron has talked about. We're going to do it real quick, but we kind of have to have the others before us before we start talking about the last one. Make sense? You on board? Not at all. It's going to be a long morning. All right, so here's your first test, and I have a gift to someone that can give me the answer. Are you ready? What is the core value, what is the mission of Fairborn UMC? All right, somebody come up, who the first person up here gets to pick a gift card. All right, hold on. What's the mission of our church? Can you give me one of the 4 core values that we've already talked about? Oh, that's true. You get a disclaimer. So here's what we'll do. Just because Matt broke his leg, and now you got to take care of him, I'll give you something too. All right, so Megan, you get a pick first. So Rebecca in the first service took the really good one. She got a $50 gift card to Cold Stone Creamery. I know. Thought about just keeping it. But all right, so pick one of those. And they're all legit, I promise. The longer you take, the less time I got to preach. All right. Although maybe that's a good thing. Maybe you should come back up. I don't know. Oh, you're very welcome. See what you get for knowing what we do and how we do it? All right, so what is our mission? To move people closer to Jesus. And we strive to do this in everything we do. And if what we're doing doesn't align under this mission, we either don't do it or we reevaluate. So this is our mission, to move people closer to Jesus. This is what wakes us up in the morning and at times keeps us still awake at night. Then we have our core values that we have been talking about, and these core values help support this mission. They help provide the framework as to the why and the how. So let's walk through these real quickly. Again, what's our mission? Look at that. So why is this our mission? Well, let's check out our first core value. We move people closer to Jesus because we exist, because all people need Jesus. So we want to move people closer to Jesus because the reality is we all need Jesus. Regardless of our age, our gender, color of our skin, type of house we live in, the style car that we drive, whether we have brown or pink hair like my daughter now does, whether we are fully tattooed or not at all, regardless of what we have done, are doing, or will do in the future, we all need Jesus. So, how do we fulfill this mission? We fulfill this mission of moving people closer to Jesus by recognizing that the heart of what we do here begins in Fairborn. We aren't excluding the other communities or people, we like them too, but our starting focus is this community of Fairborn, Ohio. Our starting focus is moving people closer to Jesus within this community because there are people that we know, people that are our neighbors, our coworkers, people in our school, people at the grocery store that we stand in line behind. There are people within our own community that don't know Jesus. So we believe the church should not be separate from the community, but fully integrated in it. We have said it before, the local church is the hope of the world. Therefore, we have to first start by being the hope and the beacon of light here. We fulfill our mission of moving people closer to Jesus by holding in tension the boundaries of biblical truth and unlimited grace. This means that we recognize, hope this doesn't come to a shock to any of you, but we recognize that we aren't perfect. I mean, I am. I'm just kidding. But we recognize that we aren't perfect people, and there is a need of grace for all. But on the other side, we also know there are certain biblical truths that we hold on to and never let go. And so there's this tension and this need to have a balance of these two, leaving room for grace while offering truth and love and accountability when necessary. We fulfill our mission of moving people closer to Jesus by expecting life change. We cannot move closer to something without changing where we are, right? We can't move forward without actually moving forward. So we expect change when you are part of what we do here. We expect change because, as Aaron said last week, God expects a change and a transformation in our life. We expect that you aren't the same as you were a year ago. Why? Because we know that when you come face to face with the grace of God, you can't ever be the same. So we expect and anticipate that there will be lives impacted and changed by what we do here. And this leads us to our final core value as a church. Now, this is a small disclaimer because this is not your typical core value of most churches. But I hope you see after today that it needs to be. So our final core value is that we encourage innovation. We encourage innovation. Now, I have to be honest, when I think about innovation, I don't think about the church. Anybody think about innovation when you think about the church? No, probably not. It's probably not like even in the top 10 things that you think about when you think of innovation. Because when I think about innovation, I think about a guy named Gutenberg. Gutenberg invented the printing press. Gutenberg invented the ability for us to mass produce information so that all people had access to it. Or I think about the Wright brothers. We can't live in this area, and I'll think about the Wright brothers, right? Sorry. So the Wright brothers, they created the airplane, which gives humans the ability to fly intelligently and hopefully having a safe landing. Or I think about, who's my next one? Thomas Edison. He's one of my favorite guys because he created the incandescent light bulb, which means at night I don't step on the Legos because the floor is dark. He was a really bright guy. Whew. Or thanks to the cartoon Phineas and Ferb, I even think of Harvey Kennedy. Anybody know, before we go to the next slide, who Harvey Kennedy is? It's like the $1 million question today. Harvey Kennedy is the man that invented the shoelace. And more importantly, Harvey Kennedy is the one that created the aglet on the end of a shoelace, which means you and I don't have to be frustrated and ticked off when we lace up our shoes. We have a nice, easy, peaceful process when we lace up our shoes, thanks to Harvey Kennedy. You see, I got to be honest that I don't think of the church when I think of innovation. But the church has a place for this type of stuff. So innovation has quite a few definitions, and they all surround this idea of new ideas, devices, methods, or making changes to something that's already been existed. Someone sees something that needs altered and changed, and so they change it. And we have seen this all throughout history. But I think for us, this baseline definition is just too broad, and I don't think it truly captures the innovation that the church is a part of. So we're going to look at a different definition. We're going to be changing something that is already established. Look at this. We are already being innovative this morning. How about that? All right, you ready? So for our purposes within the church, innovation is the process of solving problems, making significant positive changes by seeing the possibilities of what could and should be done. All right, I'm going to say that again, even though you are smart people and can read that. Innovation is the process of solving problems and making significant positive changes by seeing the possibility of what could be and should be done within the kingdom of God. So again, when I think of innovation, I rarely think of the church. But if anywhere should be innovative, it should be the church. However, over the years, the church has had this reputation of kind of being stuck right? We get hung up on the way we've always done it. But the reality is the church should be the hotbed of innovation because God is all about innovation. In fact, we could even go as far as claiming that God is the OG of innovation. Sorry, my one little fun pitch in there. And we don't have to look far to see this. So let's start at the very beginning. Because you know what? It's a very good place to start. All right, so if you have your Bibles with you, let's turn to Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And now the earth was formless and empty, and darkness was over the surface of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. You see, God saw the possibilities of this vast space that was before him. He saw what could and should be in this space, and he did something about it. God saw the potential problems of just leaving this space empty, and so he made some significant changes to it. And God didn't stop with heaven and earth. We can continue reading. He kept innovating. He kept changing. He saw a world filled with night and day, land and water, nature, stars, land and sea animals, birds in the air. And finally, he saw you and me. Genesis 1:26. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image. In our likeness, let them rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air, over the livestock, over all the earth, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female. He created them. And God saw all that he had made and said, "Whew, that's good stuff right there." So not only do we have a God of innovation, but we have been created to do the same. Because we are made in the image of God, we have therefore been pre-wired to be innovative people. We were not pre-wired to be people who never adapt. We were not pre-wired to never change. We were not pre-wired to hold on to our life's motto as being, well, this is not how we've always done it. We have been pre-wired to innovate. And innovation didn't stop with God. All through the scriptures in our world history, we hear story after story of individuals innovating, solving problems, and making significant positive changes because they saw what should and could be. God encourages us to innovate, and that's why we encourage you to innovate here. Now, we don't encourage innovation at Fairborn UMC to be hip, cool, or trendy. You need to know that. We don't do this to be hip, cool, or trendy because the reality is, with Aaron and I here, hip, cool, and trendy probably won't ever happen. I'm just being blunt and brutally honest with you. We don't encourage innovation for the fame, the limelight, or even being touted as the first church to do that. But we do encourage innovation for about 4 good reasons that I came up with. First, we encourage innovation not to abandon our traditions, but to adapt them so they become relevant to the needs of the culture around us. We start with this place because this is often where churches get stuck. Now, I want to commend us because I don't believe we get stuck here often. You know, again, we continue to innovate, so this is more of a reminder, hey, this is the potential problems that we could have, so let's not stay there. But there exists this underlying assumption that with innovation comes all things new and a tossing out of the old and traditional, but this is not the case. Remember, part of our definition is solving problems and making significant changes, and some of those changes are an adaptation of an existing model. So the previous method hasn't been tossed aside, but just changed to fit the needs of the culture. All we have to do is look at businesses and technology. Our phones don't look the same as they did even a year ago, right? I mean, heck, Samsung gives you one that'll even catch on fire. But all we have to do is, again, look at how the societies and our business and technology companies operate. They change their mode of operations to suit culture. They almost yearly come out with updated or new products. They innovate, and yet their traditions of quality remain the same. By the way, the iPhone 7 currently has not caught fire, exploded, and it's pretty amazing. Just my pitch. So one of my favorite quotes comes from a guy named Charles Handy. He's an Irish author and philosopher who is specialized in kind of organizational behavior and management. He said, "It is one of the paradoxes of success that the things and ways which got you to where you are seldom those things that will keep you there." Which means we can't rely on what we have always done before to get us to where we are going. Because if our mission as a church is to move people closer to Jesus, then we can't function out of our past success. We need to adapt and continue to innovate to solve the problems of today, not the problems of 10, 15 years ago. So, my question, how many of you live the same as you did 5 years ago? Anybody? I actually had like 3 people in the first service say they do. Do you have the same routine as you did 5 years ago? Do you have the same methods of work? Do you have the same type of communication? Do you have the same way that you live as you did 5 years ago? You see, I'm willing to bet that most of us don't, because I know I don't. 5 years ago, I had a 2 and a 9-month-old. Life was way different with a 2 and a 5-month or a 9-month-old. Where am I at here? I lost my notes. See, this is the problem when you actually have paper. I did not innovate well. There it is. This is why I don't use paper. We need like Jeopardy music for a minute. There we go. So our lives don't look like they did 5 years ago. Again, our routines were totally different. We lived an hour away from Fairborn, and just getting here on Sunday mornings, like I felt like we'd climbed Mount Everest. That's how hard it was. The way we communicated was different. This thing called social media wasn't nearly as prominent. We still actually called people on things called telephones that were attached to cords. And we read these funny-looking things that are black, white, and red all over. Otherwise known as books. And I'm willing to say that the majority of us have changed our method and how we do things. We have innovated our lives. So if we innovate our life, why would we not do the same within the church? You see, we can't do things the way we did 5, 10, 15 years ago. It's not because what we did back then didn't work, because it did work and it was good, but it was good for those people. It worked in that time and for that moment. You see, Jesus talks a little bit about change and innovation in Matthew. He was talking with John the Baptist and John the Baptist's disciples. He said, people don't put new wine into old wineskins because the skins will burst and the wine will be wasted. He says, no, you put new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved. You see, far too often, even in the church and in our own lives, we continue insisting on pouring this new wine into old patterns again and again and again. Sometimes we resist innovation. We fight progress. We hold on to the success of the past. I'm as guilty as anybody else on this. But Jesus says there's a danger when we do this. The danger is we get so comfortable with where we are that we're unwilling to change and innovate our methods. The danger is we become unable to see the possibilities that lie ahead in the future because we are basking in the glory of the past. This happens personally and organizationally. So we are reminded by Jesus, again, put new wine in new wineskins for the people that we have been called to reach. And I love Charles' story because this almost captures the essence of this. The man in prison wasn't changed because someone was inside a church building. He wasn't changed and impacted because he heard a preacher preaching a message. He heard the story of God in the form of a cookie. He experienced something new in a cookie. It's like Jesus was saying, you have to wrap the message of God in something new. It can't always be the same. It's not going to reach the same amount of people. Don't continue to put new wine in old wineskins. It's got to go in the new stuff. Does that all make sense? All right, it's the only one I was worried about. All right, so what does that kind of look like here? So in the past 5 years that I have been here, we have launched 2 new worship services. Both of these services were in response to the needs of our community. Again, we heard people say, we need, kind of different type of music, different style of worship, a different hour of the day, a later hour, so that we can get our kids here, so that I can sleep in a little bit longer. And if I didn't have to be here, this would definitely be the service I would come to, because I don't do early morning. And again, we even adapted within this service. We now live stream it so that more people can be reached. And then this evening, this is our second week of our evening service. Again, we heard people say, I would love to come to church on Sunday morning, but I can't get there because of work or my kids' activities. So we heard the need and we adapted to it. All right, our second one, we encourage innovation so that new ideas can be welcomed and tried out. There's a story by Tom Watson Sr. He's the founder of IBM. He kind of understood this principle. A junior executive with a company once managed to lose over $10 million, an adventure that was considered even risky by company insiders. When Watson found out about the disaster, he called the young man into his office, and upon entering, the young man blurted out, "I guess you want my resignation, huh?" And Tom Watson looked at him and says, "You can't be serious. We just spent $10 million educating you." See, there's always risk when it comes to doing innovative things, but we will never experience the reward on the other side if we never risk at all. So even when we fail, we need to fail forward and learn from our mistakes. And I'm pretty sure that half of what I do here would not have come to fruition had there not already been this culture of innovation here. Because a few years ago when I told Aaron, "Hey, I got this new idea about having people tweet and post in the service," he didn't look at me like I was nuts. Well, he might have, but it's a different story. He didn't shoot my idea down. He said, "Go for it. If you need any help, let me know." I kind of laughed because it dealt with technology, but he didn't shut me down. Again, we have this culture of innovation where we're free to try new things. I mean, we now invite you to take out your electronic devices and use them in church. I openly take the chance that you might tune me out and play a game on your phone or just scroll through social media waiting for me to be done. Did this work right away? Absolutely not. But we continue to tweak it. We continue to work on it. And now we have people sharing stories about what God is doing here on Sunday mornings and then all throughout the week. And that is such good stuff. In fact, today in the social media world, this is called Social Media Sunday. And check this out. When it comes to digital communications, we are actually at the forefront of innovation as a church. Did you know that? Did you know that we have been doing for years what some churches are doing for the very first time today? We have been encouraging you to interact through worship online with your digital devices and electronic devices. There is someone sitting in a congregation in a church across the world or across this country who for the first time has the freedom and has been invited to take a picture and post it on social media. And you have been doing it for the last 4 years. Kudos to you. And I think it's really cool that we have come this far. So we encourage innovation so we can help solve problems within our community and make significant positive changes in people's lives. So did you know that not all churches have a snack pack ministry that provides 260 plus meals to kids on the weekend? Did you know that not all churches have free clothing store that serves thousands of people a year? Did you know not all churches have a Christmas toy drive that lets kids and families in our communities have the Christmas they never thought they could have? Did you know that not all churches have an apartment ministry that houses people who are going through some rough times? Did you know that not all churches have a ministry to special needs individuals? You see, there's a lot of what we do here that is innovative. We encourage innovation so we can help solve the problems within our local community. We encourage innovation so we can be a positive voice in the mix, offering our support, help, and resources to change lives. We encourage you to listen to the needs within the city, within those you are connected with, and bring back some ideas of what we can do. Here's the last one. Finally, we encourage innovation because we recognize the possibility of what could and should be done for the kingdom. We know that God is not done with us here, because there is more to be done in this city, and there is more to be done in this church, and there is more to be done for the kingdom. Recognizing the possibilities of what could and should be means we have to dream, and dream really small. No? Just seeing if you're awake. We have to dream and dream big. We have a big God who wants to do some big things in and through us. There is more innovation God wants to do here within us and in this church so he can continue to innovate in the hearts of his people. I'll say that again. There is more innovation that God wants to do here with us so that he can continue to innovate in the hearts and lives of people. So may we continue moving forward, because progress cannot happen if we are standing still. May we be the place that people think of when they hear the word innovation. Can you imagine if in conversations in your daily lives, if someone talked about innovation and the first thing they thought of was Fairborn UMC? I don't know about you, but I think that'd be pretty cool. Would it ever happen? Who knows? It could happen. Because again, we encourage this culture of innovation. May we continue to be a church that embraces change and sees the possibility of what lies before us. And I want to leave us with this thought. Whether you are an Apple fan or not, this is still a really good statement made by Steve Jobs. He says this: "Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, those troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. The ones who think they are crazy enough to change the world are the ones who actually do. We have a God who is the God of innovation, who was crazy enough to send his Son into the world so that you and I don't have to live in sin. That's a pretty crazy thing to do. We have a God of innovation who sent his Son to the cross and died for our sins. That's a pretty crazy thing to do. But that crazy act changed the world. May we be crazy enough within this church. May we be crazy enough at Fairborn UMC to think that we can change the world. I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your support. I want to thank you for allowing me to be part of an innovative church, because you embrace it just as much as we do. And you bring back some really innovative ideas. And I just want to personally say thank you for being a part of it. And thank you for letting me join you in that process. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of a church that is dedicated to doing things differently and sometimes even a little crazy to reach the people that no one else is reaching. And may we never forget that we are created in the image of God, a God of innovation, who has called us to continually move people closer to Jesus. Amen? Amen. We're going to pray as the band comes up, if that's all right with everybody. God, we thank you. We thank you for the day that you gave us. It is absolutely gorgeous outside, and the weather is cooler, and that's always awesome. We thank you for giving us this gift of never wanting to be the same. We thank you for continuing not only to innovate within this church, but to innovate in our hearts and in our life. Because there's so much more that you have in store for us. And we can't do those things if we don't change in the process. So may we be a church, may we be a people that isn't satisfied with staying still, but continues to move forward. Help us get there and help us to not remain stuck. We thank you for these opportunities. We just ask that you continue to work in and through us so that we can be crazy enough to change the world with you. It is in your holy and awesome name that all of God's people said. I'll go forth in the grace and the crazy love of our God, who continues to not only innovate in our church, but innovate in our hearts and in our lives, so that we can think that we are crazy